Determine if a data set is skewed. Now, we have two basic distribution shapes. Actually, we have more than that. But first, the first two we're going to talk about is uniform and bimodal. And we're going to talk about these in terms of the graphs. So if we have a uniform distribution, okay, so let's just think here's our horizontal vertical axis. The uniform distribution is going to look like this, right? So thinking of they all have the same frequency. That's kind of the idea of uniform. They are all the same. So if you look at a graph and it basically looks like a square or a rectangle, you probably have a uniform distribution. Now, when we talk about bimodal, right, bi meaning two and modal meaning mode, well, the mode means it's there the most often. So if you are bimodal, that means you have two significant humps. They don't necessarily have to be the same. They're just both really, I guess, like different from the rest. So if you look at a graph and it looks like two ghosts under sheets, right? You've got your two ghosts. Then you have a bimodal data set because there are two values that are like above everybody else. Okay? Now, if it's not uniform and it's not bimodal, that's where we get into the idea of the skewness, right? So these are the most common. Very rarely are you going to see a uniform distribution. Like it just doesn't happen all that often. And then the idea of bimodal also is not real common. But skewed right, skewed left, and symmetric are quite common. So first, skewed right. Now, I like to think of it like this. If it's skewed right, then that's the way we're going. Meaning, we've got a big hump, and then it tails off to the right. Let me just... So when I think about, okay, draw an arrow of the way it goes, right here, the long side. See how it's pointing to the right? Therefore, this graphic would be skewed right. Now, with that concept, okay, so let's think through this. If we're talking about being skewed left, then you can see like, okay, find the big hump from so this would be the mode, right? What's there the most often. And then we've got a sharp down on the right, but you can see that on the left, it just kind of goes. Therefore, my arrow points to the left. So this is skewed left. Now, symmetric, I'm running out of space here, but we'll put symmetric up right here. Symmetric means that your hump is basically right in the middle. So the area on the left and the area on the right look very similar. So if you think about, if I cut a line straight down the middle, the left and the right are pretty equal. If that's true, then you have a symmetric graph, right? Because remember what symmetry is. Symmetry is if you cut it down the middle, the two sides are the same. Well, that's what we're looking for. If I cut the graph down the middle, are the two sides relative, like pretty much the same? If that's a yes, then we have a symmetric graph. Now that's if we're dealing with, like a coordinate plane in a graph. But what happens if we're talking about box and whisker plots? Because sometimes we use different box and whiskers. But the idea is the same. So if you're thinking about skewed right, okay? Skewed right means the long side is on the right. Same thing with box and whisker. So we have our box, right? And then we have our whiskers. If it's skewed right, then my right whisker is really long. So you can see this is skewed right. Skewed left, same basic idea. We would have our box. Our right whisker now would be short, and our left whisker would be longer. I'm making these a little dramatic, but this is the idea. You see the long one is on the left, skewed left. Long one's on the right, skewed right. Now, again, with the idea of symmetry, if I have my box and I'm drawing my whiskers, if my whiskers are roughly the same, so you can see if I cut a line down the middle, the left and the right are pretty much the same. Now we have a symmetric graph. So whether you're dealing with box and whiskers or just a basic coordinate graph, we can talk about the types of skewness. Now, one more thing I want to point out, I drew my 3 common skewed right, skewed left, and symmetric with these nice curved. You could also have bars, right? You can see how it kind of tails off. Same idea, swoops down to the right, skewed right. So keep that in mind when you're looking at graphs.